The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, TechBytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Rob Grimes, and welcome back to another episode of TechBytes by the IFBTA. And I'm really pleased to have a conversation guest today from one of my favorite restaurants, but I'll tell you why in a minute. Dave Harris, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Cooper's Hawk Winery and Restaurant. So welcome, Dave.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks very much for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, of course, we've met before under other circumstances and other places you've been. But it is the holiday season. I see you have your drink. I don't have my drink. But it is the holiday season, so I'm going to guess that Cooper's Hawk is pretty busy, and I'm betting that your wine club is selling a lot of wine right now.
Well, it's a time of year for parties, and a lot of us are having Christmas events, Christmas parties, and wine is a great thing to have at a Christmas party or a holiday party.
It is. It is. So why is Cooper's Hawk my favorite place? Well, I'll tell you why. So I learned something about it when I went there one time because there's a particular wine I happen to like. And so, of course, I always ask on the menu and about this, and it's called Romance Red. And so, and you see, you're shaking your head, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, I have a sweet tooth for wine, and it's a really sweet wine. So I then look on the menu, and there's like a sweet red. And so I asked the waiter, what's the difference between Romance Red and the sweet red? Can I have a taste? And I was told they're actually the same thing, but not all guys want to call it Romance Red, maybe unless they're on a date. And so anyway, my favorite wine is either Romance Red or the sweet red.
That's awesome. And now I've learned something else about our wines as well, so thank you.
Yeah, by the way, if I just messed that up and it really isn't true, well, then we'll have to do a re-recording of another episode. But listen, in your background, I mean, you've been in different parts of the industry for a while. That's why we wanted to talk with you about this and have the conversation. You're sort of like a triple threat. Now, a triple threat to me it could be singing, dancing, and acting. Well, I don't know if you do that or not, but okay. But in our industry, one might think it is hospitality, food service, and retail. However, of those, you have two of them, but you also have travel in your background.
I do indeed, yes.
Why don't you share your background with us?
Absolutely. So I've been at Cooper's Hawk a couple of months. My background, I was previously CIO for Shake Shack. I was there about 6 years. But also have this background in hospitality, a little bit in sports, and in the travel space with both airlines and car rental. So I was at Virgin Atlantic a long time ago now. And in fact, that's how I made the transition from the UK to the US. And later with Avis and JetBlue as well. So lots of different industries, but all very focused on customer experience and with brands that feel passionately about serving customers.
Well, actually, that's sort of an interesting thought that it is about customer experience. And so much today with all the technology that's being used, it seems like people are losing the customer connection sometimes or the employee connection sometimes because, you're just worried about not having that human touch. So do you want to just sort of comment or give your perspective on maybe the positive or negative use or what you've seen? It doesn't matter which industry because you're right. They're all really connected.
Yeah, I think personally for me, it's about technology to enhance the customer experience. And very much had the good fortune of working in brands where it's very much about servicing the customer on their terms. So if you're a customer and you prefer self-service, and many of us do, particularly in travel these days, we're all used to checking in on our apps and that kind of thing. If you want to do self-service, that's fantastic and that's available for you. But similarly, there are paths where you can work with an associate, whether it be someone at a check-in counter or even ordering in a restaurant. All of those options are available. So it's really about flexibility and supporting whatever the customer would like.
Well, each one of the different industries, Yankee Candle, where you had been, it's a retail, and there's also the online e-commerce component. Yep. But especially like the airline industry, a lot of people really looked at that. I don't know if they would question that technology and customer service may or may not go hand in hand in the airline industry. Sometimes, I mean, we all use it now for online check-in and bookings and things like that. But there's probably a lot more to that connection that you want to see.
I think it's again, it really varies by customer, right? So I think obviously at every touch point, you want to make sure you're providing a service, whatever the touch point is. So I really think it's dependent on the situation. I see that optionality there, and I think that's really important. I think that's where key brands focus is knowing your customer, knowing your guest, and being able to understand their needs and be able to support those. And sometimes that's involves the use of technology. Sometimes it's just very one-on-one human contact, and that interaction with a person that's really important. And being able to support both of those.
Well, you mentioned that also in your history you had stadiums and arenas in there. And I suppose that when you think about who is coming to a stadium and arena, and by the way, we shouldn't assume that they're always just sporting events either. I mean, it can be concerts, it can be all kinds of things, right? Yep. So my guess is that personalization and actually changing the mindset of the type of customers you're going to have based on the event, that one probably was a very challenging environment because you also are selling products through that. You're doing a number of different things while you're there. You're connected. Was that a different experience, or is that similar to like the airlines?
No, I think I think it was different. I think the airlines were just ahead of the pack when it came to adding technology in to support the guest experience. If we think about going to the airport, wow, it's probably more than a decade ago now. It was very much based on you went to a check-in counter, checked in with a person, you dropped your bag there, and you now compare that fast forward to today, where so much of that has a self-service option. I think the technology has been used in different places in different ways, but it's all about convenience. So in the stadium world, it's certainly moved along a lot since I left that industry. But I think just the idea of being able to help customers get what they want quickly, easily, efficiently. So in a stadium case, most of us are there for the concert, for the game, whatever it happens to be. We enjoy a beverage or something to eat while we're there.
Whatever your definition of football is, right?
Yeah, right. So both. I'm happy to say both, and experience both here. But I think being able to, generally, you're looking for that interaction to be quick and easy because you're looking to get back to your seat so you can watch what's going on. So in that situation in stadiums, it's about speed and convenience.
And people want to be there for the game, and they want to be there for the concert. They don't want to spend their time, They
want to be able to get something to eat and something to drink. They want it to be great. That's another consistent thing. It's got to be really good, but they want to get it quickly and easily. Same when we go to the airport. We want the check-in experience to be quick and easy. Most of us have done it a bunch of times, and speed and convenience is really, really important. And you've seen it in the fast casual restaurant space as well. Convenience and speed and flexibility for the guest is super important. So that's the common threads that run across them.
Well, it occurs to me that also it's funny because you made this comment about the airline industry being forward thinking. Now, I'm sure there's some people that may or may not. I mean, obviously on reservations and loyalty, they were the first out there in loyalty. Gaming. Okay, so gaming probably had the loyalty in there, but airlines and gaming, were early on to know their value of the guest, and they put the loyalty systems out there. I think as far as it comes to self-service and checkout, I think the banking industry might argue with the airline industry about kiosk as to who really changed the mindset. But I think that people did get used to the ability to check in, check out. And probably, by the way, when they started doing the kiosks, nobody was really thinking at the time how much the mobile device was going to come in and then take that away.
Yeah, I think for all of these uses of technology, and as you said, it's been there in banks with ATMs, it's all about understanding the needs of your guests and being able to serve them. Right. So if you want to be able to get cash quickly, the ATM is your answer. paying a check quickly. If you have a more complicated transaction, you can still go to someone. But I think it's this thing of it's always got to add value for the guest and help their experience. It can't be, if it's just for the benefit of the merchant, then and the customer doesn't benefit or gain from it, then it generally doesn't get traction. You see a lot of technologies out there looking for problems, but the ones that really get traction quickly are the ones where guests say, this is something of value to me and I want to use it.
Well, look, the customer or the employees, really drive technology today and what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And, it seems like sometimes in the hospitality industry, in the restaurants, we fall behind them, especially when it comes to things like payment methods or communication or why can't I do this or that. On the other hand, they're getting their training from these other industries that are using technology, and they're pushing us along, to implement things. Why can't I do this that I got perhaps in retail, or somewhere else like that?
Yeah, I think what I've seen, so when I was in retail, there were solutions available in the marketplace to really enable those things for customers. I think I've now been in the restaurant world, 6-7 years, and during that time, the availability of technology has changed dramatically. There's been huge investment both in customer facing and restaurant operations, sort of enhancing technology. There's venture capital money going in. There's entrepreneurs creating solutions for our industry. The providers that have been there have been busy recreating and reimagining their platforms to be able to service the needs of today's guests. It's been amazing to see the pace. I think that over the last 3 or 4 years, and yes, maybe COVID helped a bit, but the pace of innovation has accelerated.
By the way, I would point out, so it's interesting because if we follow your journey here, and I'm trying to think that everybody picks up little pieces of things as they go along the way, and they add to that experience. And then when they go their next position, they're able to draw upon those things. When I think about Shake Shack and I think about the companies under the Danny Meyer, was it Union Square Hospitality umbrella, they have been leading sometimes in different types of things within technology, and not all have worked. If I recall, I remember reading about trying to go cashless or something like that, and I forget what it was. And then there was, well, maybe we can't just go all cash, out. I mean, all cashless, right, out there. And I know, of course, the airlines are doing that. But you did also have the ability to work with a company that was forward thinking in technology in the restaurant industry, and in fact, invests in technologies.
Absolutely. There's although the companies function separately, there's rich history there of innovation and really thinking about how to use technology to improve the business. So it's been great to see.
But the other thing about that is, Danny Meyer has written some great books, out there about customer service and, a number of different things out there. And so that probably was a great experience of how to marry customer service and engaging with the guest and technology and trying to do it the right way. Is there some learning in there, some story?
No, I think, let's say, even though they're separate entities, the Danny Meyer and USHG DNA is very, very prevalent in everything Shake Shack does, and very much how it thinks about things. So I think being able to really think about, if you read Danny's book, Setting the Table, there's a lot of focus on guests and customer service and team member experience and team member service. And I think those ethos is just come through in what Shake Shack does and is a key part of its success. It's all about the customer, and it proves that although hospitality in a fine dining restaurant and a fast casual restaurant are a little bit different, there's this common thread of it's all about delivering that great experience, both from a culinary and a customer service and hospitality perspective, every single visit. And that's really, I think, the key.
Is there a place where it becomes too much technology or you lose? Were there some experiences in your background where you maybe put technologies in and they didn't work out because you were losing the connection or you were messing with the experience, and maybe there had been a desire to try technology, let's do something new, or let's do, but it just, is there something in there that a lesson learned?
I think it's less about technology that did or didn't work, but certainly there's a good ethos of failing quickly. I think, though, if you look at the kiosk, probably a good example. Shake Shack's had kiosks now for 6, 7 years, and there's learning along the way. There's been continual learning about what guests want from the kiosk, the best way to present information so it's easy to digest, and you've seen the same in mobile apps across industries, right? They've evolved over time. Today, you've got a combination of rich data that tells you how people are using these experiences, plus just asking. I think asking your guests a question, hey, what do you like about this? What works? What could be better? I think being able to capture data, feedback, and understand kind of the direction of technology and just continually improve them and understand what works and what doesn't. So say it's less about the binary thing of does a technology work or not, and more about optimizing it so that it actually supports the goals that you have, and supports your customers' needs.
And by the way, there's always the question of what exactly is a kiosk. The definition of certain things like kiosk have changed over time, so who knows what a kiosk is, right? One way or the other. So
exactly. The way I think 100%. The way I think about it, though, is whether I'm checking in for a flight, printing a bag tag, placing an order, it's technology to help me speed through my experience or get through my experience and be able to give me information, help me navigate whatever the process is that I'm going through. As I say, it could be a check-in or placing an order. They take many different kiosks of all shapes and sizes and capabilities. But I think as now we see them so much in everyday life, most of them have been optimized over time to be able to just improve. Look at the first generations; they're always a bit rough and ready, and that's great as part of the learning process.
Look, I always focus on even on the airline industry. When you think back to the early days of the online reservations and stuff, and think about things like a Sabre from American Express, from American Airlines. When you think about those technologies, a lot of them have been reused in different things like mobile reservations and things, but it's a different face, a different skin, on it. And even on the kiosks and some of the other technologies, they've been around for a while. But how they are placed and used today, are just totally different because the devices and the places where we expect to use them have changed.
One of the most exciting things about being in this industry is that pace of change and the pace of evolution, and being able to just learn and incrementally make it better. I love the pace of that. It happens today at light speed. It really does. And you're right that these technologies have been there for a while, but just look at how much they've changed over that time.
Well, let's take a break for a bit, and I want to come back to that discussion and then really actually talk about some of the other learnings that you have and perhaps some of the things that you've been able to leverage in the few months that you've been at Cooper's Hawk, or that they may be able to leverage from your experience as well, because there are certainly a lot of colorful things in your background that can help any organization and help certainly the TechBytes listeners. So we'll come back in just a minute with our conversation with Dave Harris, the CTO of Cooper's Hawk Winery and Restaurants.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
So welcome back to TechBytes, and I'm joined today with my conversation guest, Dave Harris, who's the CTO of Cooper's Hawk Winery and Restaurants. And we were having a conversation about some technologies and things and how innovation. Now, there's a word that comes to mind that I'm going to use in a minute, which will be deja vu. However, before I do that, I wanted to hone in on a comment you made right before the break. You talked about how it's exciting to see how innovation and change, is happening, within our interest, within our industry. And I got to tell you, that it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that I've actually had people tell me about that in the restaurant industry, because it always was the restaurant industry is so far behind retail, because they do, all these different technologies and e-commerce, and they do all the things. Oh, we're so far behind, the customer connections and mobility. That's all I would hear. And now it seems like I talk to people and they go, boy, the restaurant industry is really ahead. We need to learn from them. Why? Maybe because retailers are now putting in drive-thrus. I don't know. Online ordering and delivery, really comes from the restaurant guys. And we shouldn't say this is COVID related, although that brought it forward. We should not forget the words Pizza Hut, Domino's, Papa John's, in this particular conversation, if we really want to talk about who created online ordering and delivery, and the systems behind that. So I just find it interesting that you would point out the technological change and speed of it within the restaurant industry. And you've been in the other two. You've been in the airline. You've been in the retail.
It's definitely something I've seen over the last few years, and the great thing is being able to take some of the learnings from those industries and be able to. So that's kind of one piece. But as I say, I think now the availability of solutions has changed dramatically, and actually the economics make more sense as well. I always say one of the fascinating things I learned moving from retail to restaurants is generally if you do an e-commerce retail experience, the order goes to a distribution center and gets sent out that night, or it takes a couple of days and then you send it and the product arrives, although we're all wanting the things faster and faster, but not as fast as a restaurant where you place your order and it's a matter of minutes before your order needs to be fulfilled. But I think so that was a fascinating change to learn about. But overall, I think there's customers are demanding more. The experiences they use every day that they're used to from various industries, they're wanting to see in their everyday lives. We've all been using Amazon for a long time, and are used to how smooth and easy that purchase experience is. And I think now, I think people expect similar purchase experiences in other places, or they want everything to be that simple. And that's very good to be able to understand and learn.
It's funny that you bring up Amazon in here, because if I think about that, Amazon for a short period of time was going to do the online ordering and delivery. Mm-hmm. They were going to do it. Then they got out of it. Now, of course, they are sort of in it because they bought a Whole Foods and so they're sort of in it, but they're not doing exactly our piece of it. But it occurs to me that applications in our industry became a lot easier to use when they natively worked like what you might do on your PC or your phone. That you don't have to tell people where to find the print function. You don't have to tell them how to that they're native. Probably Amazon in e-commerce and online ordering really taught us how to handle that transaction and how to suggestively sell, using e-commerce. I think that's an interesting point.
They're one of them. I think that there's a bunch of leaders in the space, and you can look at different industries and see leaders who have helped introduce new ways of doing business, right? Whether it's Uber and Lyft in the ride sharing space, or right. All of these different brands have helped contribute to consistency in some of the experiences. We all look to the top left of a website as a place to get back to the homepage. There's certain things that have now become so
intuitive.
Common. Yes, and we know where to find things, and that's I think that's extremely helpful. Yes, push the bar for everybody in terms of how to own more guest experiences and the science that's gone into it. And for smaller companies who are perhaps don't quite have some of the deep pockets that larger brands do, there's a lot you can learn there as well.
And a lot of these groups can help us out in what we're doing. I mean, if you do use Uber as an example in there, they did and are very successful with Uber Eats. Yep. They do that around the world. But then then they add to it Uber Delivery, if you want somebody to do a service for you and pick up, I guess there's Uber Helicopter in New York, but, which is interesting. But I was having this conversation actually at coffee at 4:30 this morning with some friends, and we were talking about how Tesla was announcing their sort of shared ride driverless automobiles, that it would drop you off at work, you'd own it, but then it would be rented out for the rest of the day. And I said, that's nothing new. I see Waymo over in Phoenix or LA or something like that, using Jaguars. But maybe we should be thinking about some of the innovation that's going to come out of these companies that we may be able to leverage, in the next few years ourselves, that we may not have thought about. Are there some things that you're tracking like that out there now that you think might be useful to us?
Nothing specific. I love keeping an eye on what's going on in the technology world, as well as with all these different brands. I think there's now so much information out there. It's great to watch. Am I watching anything specific? No. Obviously, AI is becoming more prevalent in all of the solutions that we consume. So AI and Gen AI are certainly trends that are adding value to every business. But overall, it's just great to watch and see how I think great brands really understand their guests, and they understand the proposition that they want to offer, and figure out ways to deliver more to their guest. And I think that's the thing I find interesting about all of these different propositions. Whether you're a tech company pushing the boundaries of how the technology is used, or whether you're more of a consumer-oriented brand, which is looking at how these things ultimately filter down into what you offer. And every brand has a different proposition and needs to service their guests in different ways. So I think, those are the key things for me. Understanding your guest and figuring out how to continually deliver more for them is important.
Well, it's interesting, that you're talking about it. You've just given me the thought, because I'm so tired of talking about AI, and I just think it's part of the operating platform. It should just be embedded in there, just like whatever the function is that says identify your printers. I don't know. But to me, I don't focus on that. I know it should be in there as part of what makes the system tick and work and do its analysis and give me some great reports. But to just buy, I'm not just going to go buy something called AI. I expect it to be infused. Now, I know that you're thinking that, gosh, we are almost all through this whole thing, and he never asked me a thing about Cooper's Hawk. So I do need to do that, but it's probably not the way you expect. So when I first met the Cooper's Hawk people and their founder, Tim, many years ago, one of the things that amazed me at the time, and I have no clue where they are today, is at the time, I'd say it's 10 years ago, they had 30,000 people in a database in a wine club. Now, I'm sure it's exponentially even more than that today. However, this is what I find interesting. I used to complain that the hotel and airline and gaming industry knew their guests and had great loyalty programs because by law, they had to know their guests. Okay. Then comes along Starbucks, who does a great job with its online app and its loyalty and its points. And they're probably one of the best out there with size of it. But there's Cooper's Hawk, who really is a pioneer in showing the restaurant industry how you can create loyalty, have a club, and do something. I actually can't think of too many people 10 years ago and maybe even today that do it. Now, you came from the airline industry. You came from some industries that had followings and things like that. Where do you see loyalty, fitting in here going forward? And what more can we leverage in it that we should be leveraging? Whether Cooper's Hawk is doing it or not is really not that important in this conversation. But I just think they led the way in bringing that forward.
Well, I'd say I'm 2 months in, so still very much learning about Cooper's Hawk. What I'd say about loyalty, though, and the same is true a little bit in the sports world, I think loyalty is about community and people being valued for their loyalty to a brand, and feeling like they're getting something extra, something special, and that recognition. So I think the community part's really important, because whether you're a fan of a team, or you're a fan of a travel company, or you're a fan of a restaurant brand, there's a community there of people who enjoy it. For us, I think the community of people who enjoy wine, want to learn about wine, want to get that
Hey, they
sort of.
get together. I mean, they get together in groups and meet, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that community part's really important, and being able to share and learn with others who have that similar interest, I think, is incredibly powerful. Let's face it, wine can be a little intimidating. There's so many different types. There's so many terms. So I think demystifying that's really important, and that's I think part of the community proposition. But yeah, those are the two things: with community and being recognized for being in that community and your association with a brand. I've seen it where loyalty programs shouldn't just be about the transaction. It should be about your engagement in the community. And I think
Well, engagement is certainly the key thing. I love this, that you're using the word community, and you do have a community, because what seems to happen, and it happened in the hotel industry, it happened in the airline industry in the early days, when you've got, I'm trying to think of some of the names, but the Last Booking or Booking.com, where what they were doing is saying, let's go ahead and book with us. And in the early days, they just say, tell us what star hotel or what type of airline or whatever, and you'll accept what we give you, because we're going to give you what you asked for. But you weren't connected. You weren't a community. And then the airlines, took it back, and the hotels took it back and said, you know what, book with us. I think restaurants sometimes struggle with keeping the community, because there's so many apps and things out there to get your attention. If you're Starbucks, you're Starbucks. I think Cooper's Hawk, if you're Cooper's Hawk, you clearly have a very special community. But I'm not so sure that the restaurant community knows, the restaurant operators know how to create a community differentiating between just the loyalty program.
It's certainly evolving. It's certainly evolving. Now it's one, because guest needs are changing, and they're experiencing different things. So yes, I think we've seen it evolve, and I think it will continue to evolve and to add value to. At the end of the day, you're wanting to add value to that guest experience, and there's so many different ways to do it. Though I use a completely different example. I support. You won't surprise you. I support a Premier League football team in the UK. It's where I'm from. Naturally, I don't get to go.
What's the Premier League?
The
Okay. All right. Anyway, so keep going.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to go to a game sometime. We'll do that. So obviously, I can't go to games every Saturday. I live 3,500 miles away from the stadium, but I follow the team. I engage with the team. But for a brand like that, just because I can't go to the games doesn't mean I'm not a fan. And I think so for them to find ways of engaging with me, and for me to feel connected to that team and that community, is really important. So it evolves. Now, 5 years ago, or I'm not sure, can't remember exactly when the Premier League became very prevalent on TV in the US, nobody knew anything about it. So it wasn't a consideration that any of these teams had. But they've evolved now as their fan base and their community evolves and changes. And I think that's a lesson from that one that applies for all of these industries. The community changes and evolves, but you've got to be in touch with who your community is and what they need.
So I'm going to CES, and I know you've been there. I'm going to CES in a few weeks, and I always talk about the experience. Now, when I talk about the experience, I'm not necessarily and the immersive experience, right? So I think that you're being a fan in the Premier League is going to change, because you have companies like Cosm out in the West Coast. You've got the Sphere in Las Vegas. We're starting to see holograms show up, and stadiums where you can actually see, almost as if it's right in front of you, a game being played. And we got that from the gaming industry. So my guess is that you're going to be able to go in New York or Chicago to a theater-like thing or a stadium and feel like you're actually sitting there in the game. And you're starting to be able to do that today. So you won't have to be 3,000 miles away.
It's a great example.
By the way, as I start to think about it, if I really use my imagination on it, about 6-7 years ago at CES, I saw the big digital walls that people were doing. And there's some restaurants that have been experiencing the room that you're sitting in right now. I could imagine, where people have their their person cave, right? I could see them having the big seats there with walls that are just digital walls. And if they want to go visit that game, why not give them a box seat in their home? And then we'll work out the rest of. I'm trying to think of what kinds of foods I got to serve you there, but okay, create that experience, have it delivered to you, by sous vide cooking, so they don't even have to, store up a bunch of it, and you can have whatever your fish and chips, watching the game and doing whatever.
It's a great example of fan experience. We used to have this very set view of fan experience, right? Which was generally, it was in a cinema, or it was in a stadium, it was in an arena,
Right.
whatever it is, and that was the experience, and you went there. Now those definitions are changing. I think it's absolutely great example, and we'll see what who the winners and losers are in terms of providers, and we'll see what fans like and don't like in terms of those experiences and how they adapt them, and that's part of the fun of being in this
So I
business.
won't ask you the losers since we're at the end of 2024 now, but in 2025, what technologies are going to be the ones that we're going to be talking about that maybe they're either out there now but just unknown or not as well known, or maybe coming, that you see out there that you think it could be in another industry, that you think will be if I were doing this with you a year from now, what are we going to be talking about where the hot technologies of 2025?
I wouldn't call out a specific technology. I think it's entrepreneurs, it's companies, whether they're entrepreneurs creating new solutions or established companies evolving what they've got, that leverages whatever the technology that's out there to drive better solutions and more valuable solutions, whether that improves a guest experience and helps drive that, or whether it helps create operational efficiencies in a restaurant or provide some other benefit. But I think people who harness continually evolving technology to deliver valuable solutions to companies that help them grow their businesses, because we're all in here to grow and be more
Absolutely.
successful. Those will be the winners. And I think it's not about. For me, it's actually less about the individual technology and more about how they get used to drive solutions.
Absolutely. So I will just say that I did use the word deja vu before, and I'm constantly having deja vu moments where I say, oh, I sort of saw that before. Maybe it was before its time. And if I were asked this particular question, if I think about myself, because I never asked myself about it, I ask you about it. I keep starting to hear the word personalization. I think that is going to be the key word next year. But when I think about personalization, what we're talking about now I can go back deja vu moment, one-to-one marketing, or, that was a big term many years ago. And I see technologies being used for personalization to deliver a personal experience and connection, which I think is what we're talking about here. And maybe it's using tools like AI behind, but I don't think that's going to be the buzzword. So got to figure out what that is.
Yeah, it's certainly a hot topic at the moment, and I think there's, as you said, it's one of those phrases where there's many different types of personalization. There's one-to-one, there's one-to-many, but I think
one to the community.
Right. Ultimately, it's about getting the right message, the right information in front of the right people at the right time. And I think so that's what I look at. And I think you're right. There's going to be innovation in that space because we're all used to seeing things that are more relevant to us. Whatever we're doing, we're searching, we're shopping, we're doing all these things in the digital world. So yes, there is certainly the opportunity of giving guests that experience in the winery and restaurant world.
Well, listen, we're really sort of at the end of our slot here. However, I do have a question because it is the holiday season, and you like technology, I like technology. So, if I were so inclined to buy you a technology gift this year, what's on that wish list, for you?
Oh, great question. That's a great question.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're expecting much.
No. My wife would say I've already bought all the technology that I want. But no, I would say I think there is actually, I've got a lot of the technology I need. I actually think ways it can be used is an interesting thing. I've gone into as I get older, I'm finding the AirTags very helpful because just in case I forget something, I think that's an
Oh boy. Okay.
interesting technology. But no, it's actually I think it's one of those years where getting more out of what we've got is a big thing. So maybe an accessory for something that allows me to get more out of my phone, something like that. It's I think that's the big
I tell
thing.
you what, I'll look for it at CES, and if I can convince somebody to give me a freebie, I'll send it your way.
That's it. Well, hey, at CES, there's all sorts of stuff there.
But convincing them that they need to give it to you is another thing. So if you bring a camera with you and a crew, you'll probably end up there. So
there you go.
So listen, Dave, it's been a pleasure to have a conversation with you. I know I'll be seeing you next month at the NRF show, I hope, and
absolutely.
Who knows, maybe I'll run into you at CES. But it's just been a pleasure. I wish you a happy holiday, and to all who are listening today, it's been a pleasure having the conversation with Dave Harris, the CTO of Cooper's Hawk Winery and Restaurants, and thank you for joining us.
I've really enjoyed the conversation, Rob. Happy holidays as well, and happy holidays to everybody watching.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of TechBytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.